Welcome. So in this session on how do we ideate, we're going to be walking through the ideas table. As I mentioned previously, depending on what order you're watching these in, we're going to run through a few different ways that we can ideate, and using an ideation table or an ideas table is one of those ways. Just to give you an example of where this fits in, it fits into the 4DLX Grow Design Thinking Framework. When we're in the ideation phase, we're in phase 3 of the 4D Design Thinking Framework, which is in the design phase, which includes ideate, prototype, test, and validate. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some of the design thinking tools from the toolbox. And in this case, we're taking out the tool from the toolbox on how do we create an ideas table. This is our design thinking toolbox where we grab our tools for our ideas table session. So when we're creating an ideas table, what we're going to do is develop a table something like this. We're going to have the vision board in the very left-hand column. So it's going to be really clear to all those people that are participating what the vision is that we want to see move forward. And the vision was created in phase 2 of the design thinking framework. We're going to have developed prior to an ideation session a set of guidelines that fit within the vision board that we're going to ask all the participants to understand and look at, because there's always going to be guidelines in an ideation session, because it's quite a structured session completed with a facilitator. And in this case, in this example, typically in the columns, what we want to do is we want to drill down on ideas when we're trying to develop them. So I've just put an example here for you. So in this ideas table, we're looking at new market ideas, new system ideas, and new process ideas. For those of you who've done swim lanes with me, you'll understand that when we're taking our new market, a new idea to market or a new concept to market, what we're going to have to do is when we do that, we're going to have systems and processes that go with that, and we will put those into swim lanes. So it's a really good idea to sort of start using an ideas table. We start to put those swim lanes in there already. So what you want to do is, like with any ideation process, whether it's in a physical space where everybody's together, like in a boardroom or something like that, or a meeting room, or whether it's in a virtual space and you're using something like Zoom or Teams or whatever it is you're using, or whether it's in a phygital space where you're using a combination of people in various physical locations and people in various virtual locations, and you're joining in together. And there's a multitude of ways that works, and again, becoming much more mainstream. So all of those people, wherever they're located, they need to be in a quiet place. They need to be not disturbed, so all notifications, phones, etc. turned off. They need to be allocated a time for the activity. Again, we recommend 30-minute intervals. They can be less than that, they can be more than that. It's just a recommendation, everybody's different. We also recommend to commit 2 hours or 2 to 3 hours. 2 hours is a good amount of time. So what often we'll do is we'll do 4 loops of 15 minutes of 2 hours, but we'll do that across a 3-hour time period where we might have breaks of sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10, sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes longer. And sometimes we'll get people to do things within those breaks, whether it be go for a walk, whether it be review the ideas board to see where we're at, etc., etc. So depending on what your facilitator is asking you, you want to commit for that period of time. There's no evidence that shows allowing more time than 2 hours of working together in total produces any better results. There's a lot of evidence that actually shows that the results kind of get worse because people get tired, they can't keep the energy up. So we recommend you've got to keep peak performance, and to do that it might be getting people to go for a walk, bring them drinks, snacks, whatever it takes, depending on what time of day you're doing it, depending on the night, whether it's night time, depending on the venue, depending on where you're all located in relation to each other. But it's really putting the people involved in this process and putting them first to think about, well, what it is they're going to, because if you want to produce lots of creativity about them, you've got to make it easy for them to do that. So when we're looking at, in this example, we're talking about new market ideas. So in this case, again, start focusing on the first column. So the first column is you're looking at what we call an opportunity column. So each of these columns are what we call opportunities. So we have new market ideas, new system ideas, and new process ideas. These are all opportunities. And what you want to do is, again, break up your teams into smaller groups. And as I said to you, ideally 15 minutes per group. Sometimes it might just be, hey, let's just work on a guideline per group. Some people will get each of the groups to slowly move through all of the guidelines. So how you do that can vary, depending again on what you're trying to achieve, depending on where your teams are all coming from, how much time you've got. But you definitely want to have as much variability within your teams in terms of the ranking of people in the organisation and where they're coming from across various different business units. Again, you want to think, allocate 15 minutes per guideline and really get as many ideas as you possibly can to match with guideline 1. So that guideline 1 will match with your vision board as well. So you're trying to get some synergy going across the board. And the same will happen when we go to guideline 2 and guideline 3 and guideline 4. So some people will have, they'll split their teams, their larger teams up into 4 smaller teams and have each team working on a separate guideline, and then just keep moving those teams around. Other people will just have everybody broken up into teams and let's all just work on guideline 1. So there are different ways of doing this task, and it depends on how it works within your own organisation. But in this case, try and allocate a good amount of time for your higher level idea, because that's the idea that you're moving forward with, and that's your primary idea that you're trying to create. So in this case, what we're trying to do is create a new market idea, and the systems ideas that work with that and the process ideas that work with that are the swim lanes, and they're secondary to the key market idea that we've envisaged on our vision board. As I mentioned, you want to have your teams broken up into groups. So in this case, what we've done is we allocated an hour to our market ideas and we gave each group 15 minutes each. In our second column, where we're now working on the systems, which, as I said to you, is a swim lane or a secondary notion that fits in with the market ideas. We want to look at the ideas. So if we're working on systems ideas, we want to look at the system ideas in relation to the market ideas, in relation to the vision board. So, that can be a lot to take in when you're doing it for the very first time. So your vision board is your key idea that we're trying to bring alive. From that vision board, we've created 4 guidelines. Now what we're going to look at is in guideline 1, we're going to look at the market ideas in relation to guideline 1. And we're going to try and develop system ideas that will make those market ideas come alive. And we're going to do this process for guideline 2, and then guideline 3, and then guideline 4. And in this case, we're just going to be allocating 7.5 minutes or 7.5 minutes per team for this exercise. Again, it could be more or it could be less. You probably really don't want to do less because you actually do want to come up with some ideas. Some people might even just say, look, let's just go with the 10 minutes or the 15 minutes. How it works in your group, in your environment, will depend on how much time you've allocated for the entire exercise, how many people you've got in your groups. And again, as I said to you, a lot of people will say, look, just to make it work faster, let's split up our people into 4 key groups and we'll just keep rotating. So, for example, if in session 1, the team that came up with guideline 1 might have been group 1, the team that came up with guideline 2 might be group 2, etc., through to group 4. So then what we might do is move group 4, when we move to system ideas, working out a system idea that works with guideline number 1. So we're constantly moving our teams around, and that way they can all help each other see things from different perspectives, because we're trying to get divergent viewpoints, and that's really, really key in this process. So again, similar to what we've previously done, we're looking at process ideas in this final stage. So again, your vision board's your key thing. We've developed the vision board into 4 different guidelines. We've developed market ideas that go with each of these guidelines. Within each of these market ideas, we've developed system ideas to bring the market ideas alive. And now what we're doing is we're developing process ideas so that those processes will match the systems, which match the market, which match the vision board. And again, we're allocating half an hour. So we've got each of the teams working on each of the guidelines. So you can give half an hour and you can just do 1 per each group, or you can split them up into 7.5 minutes. So how you do that process will vary again. Now, remembering if we had, say, for example, team 4 who worked on guideline 4 and in market ideas, and then they moved to guideline 1 for system ideas, they would then now move to guideline 2 in process ideas, so that we're constantly moving the team around. So what will happen is when we've finished, we'll end up with a complete ideas table. So you can do this ideas table on masses of, if you're in a physical space, you may do this on masses of paper and pens and coloured textures and what have you, and sticky notes, or you can do it digitally on a vision board, so something like using Mural, or you can do it on Google using using charts. You can also use it if you're using Apple. You can use it on their whiteboard space. You can do it on whiteboard as well. You can do it on Stormboard. There's a whole Flipboards. There's a whole range of ways that you can do this visually, whether it be in a digital or a physical space. And you will end up with a complete ideas table when you have finished. So once you've finished with your ideas table, you then will move to your second session within the Ideate process. And the second session we recommend doing on a different day. And that session will be on reducing your ideas down. And so what we'll get you to do is to pull out that card on how do we reduce our ideas out of the design thinking toolbox so that you can move ahead to the next stage.